Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into a story about tackling debt and finding financial freedom. We'll be looking at an excerpt from Rachel's Journey to Debt Control and Saving, Mr. Grant Money's Guide to Financial Freedom. This Rachel, she's struggling even with a steady job. Does that sound familiar to anyone out there?
Oh, yeah. It's a scenario that plays out more often than you'd think. Debt can be a real weight, you
Yeah.
know, regardless of your income level. And there's often a heavy dose of shame that comes with it, which makes it harder to even talk about,
Right.
let alone actually try to fix it.
Yeah, and Rachel really hits on that right away, like right from the start. She's wondering if it's HRR that's failing or the whole system.
Yeah.
It's like she's in Seattle on a rainy day, her finances mirroring the gloomy weather, but then she runs into this financial mentor, Mr. Grant Money, and he's got the sunny yellow umbrella. I mean, come on, that's got to be symbolic, right?
Definitely sets the stage for someone who might be able to bring a fresh perspective. It's interesting. We often picture financial help that way, right? Someone to bring light to a problem that feels really dark and heavy.
And Mr. Grant Money totally lives up to that image, but instead of launching into a lecture or something, he does something pretty unexpected. He starts talking about debt as like a story. What do you make of that approach?
It's brilliant, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Every purchase we make, every bill, it all has a reason behind it. Maybe it was a need. Maybe it was a want. Maybe even, trying to fill some sort of emotional gap with stuff. Mr. Grant Money is trying to get Rachel to examine those motivations.
So it's not just about the numbers, it's more about the psychology behind our spending.
Exactly. It's about helping her connect emotionally with her finances, which is key to breaking those bad habits we all have. And from there, they move on to something he calls a financial reset plan. Not exactly a revolutionary term or anything, but it's
Yeah.
classic for a reason.
Back to basics, right. But that can be hard when you're feeling totally overwhelmed. Where does Rachel even begin with this plan?
First, you've got to face the music. List out every single debt you have, the interest rate on each one. It's like getting an aerial view of your financial landscape. Not always pretty, but it's essential for actually making a plan.
And I bet credit card debt is high on that list for a lot of folks. Mr. Grant Money really emphasizes tackling those high-interest debts first. Why is that so crucial?
It's all about the snowball effect, but in a bad way. Let's say you've got a credit card at 20% interest. If you're only making the minimum payments, you're basically just throwing money away on interest, barely touching the principal. Compare that to something like a personal loan at 5%. The difference over time is staggering.
So even if it feels scary to lay it all out there
Yeah,
and see those numbers, it's the first step to regaining control.
absolutely. And that's where Mr. Grant Money's guidance really comes in. He helps Rachel see the path forward, one step at a time.
But then Rachel brings up something that I think will resonate with a lot of listeners. She feels guilty about even thinking about saving money while she's still in debt. It's like, how can she justify putting money aside when she's got all these bills looming over her?
Oh yeah, that's a common mental block I see all the time. We tend to see saving and debt as these separate battles. But Mr. Grant Money flips that script.
So he's not saying, wait till you're completely debt-free to start saving.
Not at all. Even small amounts saved consistently can make a huge difference over time. It's about building that muscle memory, putting something aside for the future no matter what. Plus, you're creating a buffer for emergencies, right? So
Yeah.
you're less likely to fall back into debt when the car breaks down or whatever life throws your way. It's about breaking that paycheck to paycheck cycle so many people are stuck in.
To illustrate this, Mr. Grant Money uses an analogy that really stuck with me. He compares building a financial plan to, like, planting a garden.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Just like a garden. Your finances need tending. You plant the seeds, you nurture them. You weed out the things that are hindering growth. And eventually, you start to see the fruits of your labor.
Okay, so we've got this foundation, understanding your spending, creating a plan, attacking that high-interest debt. But there's more to it, right? Mr. Grant Money doesn't just focus on the practical stuff. He also picks up on Rachel's emotional state. She's feeling overwhelmed, discouraged.
And that's such a crucial part of the equation. He recognizes that mindset is just as important as any spreadsheet. He's not just giving her financial advice.
Yeah.
He's giving her emotional support as well.
Yeah.
He helps her see that she's not a failure or anything. It's a tough situation, sure, but it's a challenge to overcome, not a life sentence.
Yeah, so instead of why me, it becomes more like, okay, what can I do about this?
Exactly. He empowers her to take ownership.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but as they keep walking, you can practically feel the weight lifting off her shoulders, the rain still coming down, but there's this sense of hope starting to break through.
It's like he's given her a new lens to view her finances through. Everything's still there, but suddenly it just seems more manageable.
That's the power of good mentorship, right? It's not just about the information. It's about empowering someone to write their own financial story. And there's a detail in Mr. Grant Money's approach that I find particularly interesting. He never actually defines what success means for Rachel,
Now that you mention it, he doesn't, does he? He leaves that for her to figure out on her own.
which is brilliant. So often we get caught up in these external markers of success, net worth, a fancy car, whatever. But true financial well-being, it goes way deeper than that. It's personal.
So how can someone measure their own financial success if it's not just about the numbers?
By asking themselves, what does financial freedom look like for many? Is it security? Flexibility? Maybe it's the ability to be generous with your money or pursue a passion without constantly stressing about money. Those are the questions Mr. Grant Money prompts Rachel to consider.
It makes the story so much more relatable, don't you think? It's not just a step-by-step guide. It's about figuring out your own values and priorities.
Absolutely. It's about that internal shift, understanding your own unique relationship with money. Because ultimately, that's what drives lasting change.
Okay, so let's recap Mr. Grant Money's key points here. We've got understanding the why behind your spending, making that financial reset plan, and tackling that high-interest debt first. Plus, remembering that saving, even small amounts, is part of the journey, not something to wait for later.
All crucial steps. And remember, you don't have to do it all perfectly from day one. It's a process, right?
Yeah.
Just like tending that garden we talked about.
Speaking of, this might be a good time to pull back for a moment. We focused on what individuals can do, which is great. But what about those bigger systemic issues that Rachel touched on earlier? The rising cost of living, student loan debt. How does that fit into the equation?
Well, it's a huge piece of the puzzle, no doubt. We need to advocate for policies that actually make it easier for folks to build financial stability. Things like affordable housing, accessible education, wages that actually keep up with the real cost of living. Those are essential for creating a system where more people can thrive.
And in the meantime, are there things individuals can do beyond their own finances to help push for that kind of change?
Definitely. Support organizations fighting for economic justice, vote for candidates who prioritize those issues, even just having conversations with your friends and family, raising awareness. It all adds up because individual choices matter. But so does the system we're all operating within.
It's like a multi-pronged approach then, working on your own finances, while also pushing for larger changes that benefit everyone.
Exactly. And while those bigger solutions take time, there's one thing we can all do right now. To shift our perspective, I'm curious, what does financial success look like for you? Forget about what society says. What truly matters to you in terms of your own financial well-being?
That's a great question for our listeners to ponder. Is it a number in your bank account? Or is it something more intangible, a feeling of security, the freedom to pursue your dreams?
Maybe it's being able to help others, or simply not feeling stressed about money all the time. Take a moment to define what that success means for you, because your financial journey is unique. And you get to choose what the destination actually looks like.
That's empowering. It takes some of the pressure off too, right? Because there's no single right answer.
Exactly. And that's something Rachel discovers as she continues her walk with Mr. Grant Money.
It feels like that's a key takeaway from this whole story, financial well-being. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal, is it?
Absolutely. It's about aligning your finances with your own values and your vision for your life. And yeah, that might look different for everyone.
Now, at the end of the excerpt we were given, there are a few questions meant to get readers thinking. Do you mind if we dive into those for a bit?
Not at all. I always appreciate some bonus content. Let's hear them.
Okay, first up, how do you define success in your financial journey? Is it just about the numbers, or does personal growth factor in as well?
That's a great place to start, I think. It forces us to think beyond just the dollars and cents, because honestly, the journey itself can be really transformative. We learn resilience. We clarify what truly matters to us. Those are variable lessons, no matter what your net worth is.
It's like, how has the process of managing your money changed you as a person? That's something we don't often consider.
Exactly. And it's tied to the next question, which asks us to reflect on a time when we felt really overwhelmed by our finances. What steps did we take to regain control?
I think back to times when I felt lost financially, and for me, it was always those small, concrete actions that started to turn things around. Creating a budget, even if it was just on a scrap of paper, it's that feeling of taking charge, even when the problem just feels huge.
And remembering those past wins can be so empowering, too. It proves that we've got the strength to navigate those tough situations, which leads perfectly into the next question. What small changes can we make to improve our relationship with money?
I love that emphasis on small changes because, let's be real, overhauling your entire life overnight, not realistic for most of us, but those little tweaks, like cutting back on one unnecessary expense or setting up an automatic savings transfer, those are definitely doable.
And it highlights that consistency trumps perfection. You don't need a radical transformation. You just need steady progress.
Okay, getting a bit deeper now, how does your mindset influence how you approach financial challenges? This one feels big.
Huge. If you're constantly telling yourself, I'm just bad with money, or
Yeah.
I'll never get out of debt, you're basically setting yourself up to fail. Our thoughts really do shape our reality, so cultivating a positive, empowering mindset is crucial.
So instead of focusing on what you err at the SAF, maybe try to focus on the progress you are making, even if it's small. Celebrate those wins.
Exactly. Shift that narrative from scarcity to abundance.
Yeah.
And finally, a fun one to wrap things up. If you could ask Mr. Grant Money one question about financial planning, what would it be?
Oh, that's tough. So many possibilities. I think I'd want to know what's the biggest mistake he sees people making. Not so I can avoid it perfectly, but just to be aware of those common pitfalls.
That's a great question. It shows you're thinking critically and wanting to learn from other people's experiences. Because as much as personal finance is personal, there are definitely some universal traps we can try to avoid.
Well, on that note, I think we've pretty much exhausted our deep dive into Rachel's story. Any final wisdom you'd like to impart before we let our listeners go?
Just this. Financial well-being is a journey, not a destination. It's going to have its ups and downs. But with the right tools and the right mindset, you can create a financial life that truly supports your goals and values.
And remember, you don't have to go it alone. There are resources out there, communities, and even mentors like Mr. Grant Money to help you along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So keep learning, keep growing, and keep those questions coming.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.
And remember, you've got this.